The massive ships appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds blocking out the sun. Commander Vexthel stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue planet below. His crystalline body sparkled with different colors as emotions flowed through him. Today would be another easy victory for the Zelthurian Empire. "Report," Vexthel commanded in his deep, echoing voice. "Sir, we have studied their communication signals for 3 days. The humans are primitive. They spend most of their time watching entertainment and fighting each other. Their weapons are simple projectile devices and explosive chemicals," his second officer reported. Vexthel nodded his crystal head. This would be simple. In his 200 years of conquest, he had taken over 43 worlds. The pattern was always the same. Show overwhelming force, demonstrate superior technology, watch the primitive aliens surrender in fear, then strip their world of resources and move on. "Their leaders are already sending surrender messages," the communications officer announced. "They call themselves the United Nations and offer complete submission." "Excellent. But first, we make an example. Choose one of their learning centers. I want to show their young how powerless they are against us." Fear spreads faster when the next generation sees it. Far below on Earth, Maya Chun sat in her favorite spot in Professor Harrison's advanced physics classroom. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Terra Nova University. She was completely focused on her tablet, working through quantum equations for her final project. The mathematics danced across the screen as she tested different theories about quantum entanglement applications. "Maya, did you hear about the alien ships?" Her classmate Jake whispered from the seat next to her. "Ah," Maya replied without looking up. She was close to a breakthrough in her calculations. If her theory was right, quantum entanglement could be used to create instantaneous communication across any distance. The math was complex, but she could feel the solution just at the edge of her understanding. "The president is on every channel telling everyone to stay calm," Jake continued. "They say the aliens haven't attacked yet." Maya finally glanced up. "That's nice. Can you help me check this equation? I think there's an error in the third variable." Jake stared at her. "Maya, alien spaceships are in our sky. This could be the end of the world. The end of the world would make it really hard to finish my project," Maya said seriously. "Professor Harrison said it's due tomorrow, aliens or no aliens." Across the room, Professor Harrison was trying to act normal, but Maya could see the worry in his eyes. He kept checking his phone and glancing at the news feeds on the classroom screens. Other students whispered nervously to each other, but most were still trying to focus on their work. That was the thing about advanced physics students. They had learned to focus on solving problems, even when the world seemed crazy in orbit above them. Vexthel was selecting his target. "This institution," he said, pointing to Terra Nova University on the holographic display. "It appears to be where they train their young in technical knowledge. Perfect for our demonstration." The Zeltharian strike team prepared for teleportation. 8 soldiers, each standing 8 feet tall with bodies made of living crystal that could shift between different colors. Their weapons were based on quantum field manipulation, technology that could dissolve matter at the atomic level. No primitive species had ever survived a demonstration of Zelthurian power. "Remember," Vexthel told his team, "we want fear, not destruction. Let them see our power, watch them beg, then leave them alive to spread the terror. The whole planet will surrender within hours." Maya was deep in her calculations when Professor Harrison's voice cut through her concentration. "Students, I need everyone to remain calm. We're going to continue with today's lesson on quantum mechanics. Whatever happens, remember that panic never solved any equation." "Professor," called out Sarah from the back row, "should we be worried about the news reports?" "Science has always been humanity's way of understanding the unknown," Professor Harrison replied calmly. Fear is just what we feel when we don't understand something yet. So let's focus on understanding. Maya smiled. That was why she loved physics. Every mystery was just a puzzle waiting to be solved. She looked back at her tablet, where the quantum equations were starting to make sense. She was working on something completely theoretical, how quantum fields could be manipulated to affect matter at a distance. It was probably impossible, but the math was fascinating. The air in the classroom suddenly began to shimmer. Maya looked up, mildly annoyed by the distraction. Then she noticed something interesting. The air was bending in specific patterns, like light passing through water. But there was no water there. That's weird, she said to Jake. Look at how the air is refracting light. It's like something is changing the density of space itself. Other students were starting to notice too. The shimming grew stronger, and then there was a flash of bright blue light. When Maya's eyes adjusted, she found herself looking at 8 enormous creatures made of what appeared to be living crystal. They had roughly humanoid shapes but moved in ways that seemed to ignore normal physics. Fascinating, Maya whispered, reaching for her tablet to take notes. Are you naturally occurring crystalline structures or some kind of artificial construct? The lead alien, the one with the most complex crystal formations on his head, stepped forward. His voice boomed through the classroom like thunder. Humans of Earth, I am Commander Vexthil of the Zeltharian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will submit to our authority or face destruction. Most of the students gasped and moved back in their chairs. A few started to cry. But Maya just tilted her head, studying the aliens with intense curiosity. She raised her hand like she was asking a question in class. Excuse me, she said politely. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm really curious about your cellular structure. Are you silicon-carbon hybrids? Because your crystalline matrix seems to be held together by some kind of quantum field resonance. That's incredibly advanced biological engineering. Commander Vexthil stopped mid-speech. In all his years of conquest, no primitive alien had ever asked him about biological engineering in the middle of a surrender demand. He looked down at this small human female who seemed more interested in taking notes than running in terror. This was not going according to plan. Commander Vexthil stared down at the young human female who had just asked him about his biological structure. This had never happened before. When his warriors appeared on a new world, the primitive beings either ran away screaming or fell to their knees begging for mercy. They did not ask scientific questions. Silence, primitive creature. Vexthil boomed, his crystal body flashing angry red colors. You dare to question your superior beings? Maya looked up from her tablet where she was quickly writing notes. Oh, I'm not questioning you. I'm just really curious. I've never seen living crystal structures that maintain stability through quantum coherence before. The physics must be incredibly complex. The other Zeltharian soldiers shifted nervously. Their commander was supposed to inspire immediate terror, not answer questions about physics. But Vexthil was too confused to be properly angry. He had conquered dozens of worlds, and no primitive species had ever understood quantum coherence, much less recognized it in his body structure. Professor Harrison stood up slowly, trying to position himself between his students and the aliens. Students, please remain calm and stay in your seats, he said in his steady teacher voice. Behind him, he quietly pressed a small button on his desk that would alert campus security and emergency services. Maya, he added gently, perhaps this isn't the best time for scientific discussion. But Professor, Maya said, turning toward him with excitement in her eyes, this is amazing. They're using principles we've only theorized about. Their bodies are basically living examples of quantum field manipulation. This could advance our understanding by decades. Jake grabbed Maya's arm. Maya, these are aliens with weapons. They just threatened to destroy our world. Maya looked around the classroom, finally noticing that her fellow students were scared. Sarah was crying quietly in the corner. Tom and Lisa were holding hands and looked pale. Even confident Marcus was pressed back in his chair, staring at the crystalline warriors with wide eyes. "Oh," Maya said, understanding dawning on her face. "You're all afraid." She looked back at the aliens, then at her frightened classmates, then back at the aliens again. "I guess I should be afraid too," she said thoughtfully. "But you're just so scientifically interesting." Commander Vestal felt his carefully planned invasion speech falling apart. These humans were reacting all wrong. The small female showed no fear at all, and her lack of fear seemed to be confusing his soldiers too. He needed to regain control of the situation. "Behold the power of the Zeltharian Empire," he declared, raising one of his warriors' weapons. The device looked like a rod of pure light, humming with barely contained energy. "This is a quantum field disruptor. It can unmake any matter at the atomic level." To demonstrate, he pointed the weapon at Professor Harrison's desk. There was a brief flash of blue light, and the entire desk simply vanished. Not burned, not broken, just gone, as if it had never existed at all. The only trace was a perfectly smooth circle cut into the floor where the desk legs had been. Several students screamed. Jake fell backward off his chair. Even Professor Harrison took a step back, his face going white, but Maya leaned forward in her seat, eyes bright with fascination. "Incredible! You're manipulating quantum fields to disrupt atomic bonds. But how do you maintain field stability at that energy level? The power requirements must be enormous." She stood up for a better view, pulling out her tablet to take more notes. "Can you show me how the targeting system works? And what's the effective range? I bet there are some really interesting limitations based on quantum uncertainty principles." "Sit down," Vexthil commanded, his voice echoing through the room. "Show proper fear, or I will demonstrate this weapon on one of your companions." Maya paused, looking genuinely confused. "Why would you do that? That would be wasteful. Besides, if you hurt someone, I won't be able to concentrate on studying your technology." She sat back down, but kept her tablet ready. "Could you maybe disintegrate something else instead? I want to see if the quantum field effect varies with different molecular structures." The Zeltharian warriors exchanged glances. In their crystal faces, confusion was starting to replace confidence. Their weapons had always created immediate surrender. The sight of matter simply ceasing to exist drove fear into the hearts of every species they had ever encountered. But this humans seemed to think their most terrifying weapon was educational. Vexthil, second in command, stepped closer to him. "Commander," the warrior whispered, "this is not proceeding as planned. The human female shows no fear response. Should we eliminate her?" "No," Vexthil replied quietly. "Something is wrong here. This species should not understand quantum field manipulation. They should not recognize our technology. Continue the demonstration." He raised his voice again. "Humans, your world is now property of the Zeltharian Empire. You will submit to our rule, or we will reduce your cities to quantum dust. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your primitive science cannot comprehend us. You have no choice but surrender." Through the classroom windows, they could see other Zeltharian ships engaging human spacecraft in the upper atmosphere. Bright flashes of weapons fire lit up the sky like a deadly fireworks show. "Actually," Maya said, raising her hand again, "I think there might be a problem with your intelligence reports." "Explain," Vexthil demanded. Despite himself, Maya stood up and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker. "Well, you said we couldn't comprehend your science. But quantum field manipulation isn't really that advanced. Humans have been studying quantum mechanics for over 200 years. She began writing equations on the board in her neat handwriting. See, we understand how quantum fields work. We know how to create them, control them, and... She paused, looking at the equations she had just written. And disrupt them, she finished quietly. The classroom fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle outside. Maya stared at the whiteboard, her marker still in her hand. The other students couldn't understand the complex mathematics she had written, but they could see the change in her expression. Maya? Professor Harrison asked softly. What is it? Maya turned back to look at Commander Vexthal. For the first time since the aliens had appeared, she wasn't smiling with curiosity. Her face was serious, thoughtful, and maybe a little concerned. You said your bodies are quantum field structures, she said slowly, and your weapons work by disrupting quantum fields. But quantum fields can interfere with each other. If someone knew the right frequency... She trailed off, looking back at the equations on the board. Commander Vexthal felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. A cold chill of uncertainty ran through his crystalline body. What are you suggesting, human? Maya looked directly into his glowing crystal eyes. I'm not suggesting anything yet, but I think I need to check my math. She turned back to the whiteboard and began writing more equations, working faster now. The marker squeaked against the board as she filled it with complex mathematical formulas. Outside, the battle continued. But inside the classroom, everyone, human and alien alike, watched Maya work, sensing that something important was happening on that whiteboard. Maya filled the whiteboard with equations while everyone in the classroom watched in tense silence. Her marker moved quickly across the surface as she worked, through complex mathematical relationships between quantum field frequencies and crystalline molecular structures. Commander Vexthal found himself stepping closer to read her work. As a military commander, he understood the basics of the technology his weapons used, but this human was writing mathematics beyond his knowledge. The symbols and formulas seemed to dance across the board with frightening precision. Interesting, Maya said to herself, tapping the marker against her lip. If I'm reading your biosignatures correctly, your entire species exists because of quantum field resonance maintaining molecular stability. How could you possibly know that? Vexthal demanded. That information is classified at the highest levels of our Science Council. Maya glanced back at him with a slight smile. It's pretty obvious if you know what to look for. Your crystalline structures vibrate at specific frequencies. I can see the quantum resonance patterns in how light refracts through your bodies. Basic physics, really. She turned back to the board and added more equations. But here's what's really fascinating. You're using quantum field disruptors as weapons. But you haven't considered the resonance cascade implications. Professor Harrison had moved closer to see Maya's work. His face went pale as he recognized some of the formulas. Maya, he said quietly, are you calculating what I think you're calculating? Probably, Maya replied, not looking away from her equations. Though I hope I'm wrong about some of this. Jake had recovered from his earlier fall and was now standing behind Maya, trying to understand what she was writing. What does it all mean? He asked. It means, Maya said, pausing to double-check a calculation, that their weapons and their biology are based on the same quantum principles, which creates some very interesting possibilities. She drew a diagram showing wave patterns. See, every quantum field has a resonance frequency. Push a field at exactly the right frequency and it amplifies. But push it at the wrong frequency. She drew intersecting waves that canceled each other out, and the field collapses. Commander Vexthal was beginning to understand why his conquest was not going as planned. Through the windows, he could see that the human spacecraft were lasting much longer against his fleet than they should. Some were even managing to damage Zelthurian ships, which should have been impossible with primitive technology. "You said humans have studied quantum mechanics for 200 years, he said slowly. "Oh yes," Maya replied cheerfully. "Still writing equations. We've gotten quite good at it. Humans love taking things apart to see how they work. And once we understand how something works, we usually figure out how to break it too." She stepped back from the whiteboard to examine her work. "For instance, I've been working on quantum entanglement applications for my final project. The math is really similar to what you're using for your technology." "Show me your project," Vexthal ordered. Maya picked up her tablet and scrolled through her files. "Well, it's mostly theoretical. I've been exploring how quantum field manipulation could be used for instantaneous communication across vast distances. The key is finding the right resonance frequencies to maintain quantum entanglement stability." She held up the tablet so he could see her work. "But while I was researching resonance frequencies, I discovered something interesting. Certain frequencies don't just maintain quantum fields, they can destabilize them completely." The Zeltharian soldiers had moved closer to listen. Their crystal bodies were beginning to flicker with nervous energy. They were warriors, not scientists, but they understood enough to realize this conversation was becoming dangerous. "These destabilization frequencies," Vexthal asked carefully, "would they affect our technology?" Maya looked up at him with genuine curiosity. "Your technology? Oh, definitely. But that's not the really interesting part." She turned back to the whiteboard and circled several equations. "The really interesting part is that the same frequencies that would destabilize your weapons would also destabilize the quantum fields, holding your molecular structure together." The classroom became very quiet. Even the sounds of distant battle seemed muted. "You're saying," Professor Harrison said slowly, "that if someone broadcast the right frequency, it could affect their entire species?" "Theoretically, yes," Maya said, still focused on her calculations. "Though I'd have to run more tests to be certain. The math suggests that Zeltharian quantum biology would be vulnerable to specific resonance cascade failures." She turned to face Commander Vexthal directly. "Is that why you were so confident about conquering us? Because you thought we wouldn't understand quantum field manipulation?" Vexthal's crystal body was now flickering between different colors rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "No primitive world has ever understood our technology," he said, his voice sounding less confident than before. "Oh, we're not primitive," Maya said matter-of-factly. "We're just young. There's a difference. Humans have been doing science for a really long time. We might not be as advanced as you in some ways, but we're very good at figuring out how things work." She looked back at her equations thoughtfully. "Actually, I think the problem is that you've been conquering species that never developed quantum science. But humans love math and physics. We think it's fun." "Fun?" Vexthal repeated. "Sure. Look at this." Maya pointed to a complex equation on the board. "This formula describes how quantum fields interact with crystalline molecular structures. Isn't that beautiful? The way the mathematics just flows together to create stable matter from pure energy." She grinned at the alien commander. "I bet your scientists back home would love to discuss this with our physicists. We could probably learn a lot from each other." "That assumes," Vexthal said grimly, "that either of our species survives this encounter." Maya tilted her head, confused. "Why wouldn't we survive? I mean, unless you were planning to kill us all for some reason?" The alien commander looked around the classroom at the frightened human students, then at the enthusiastic young scientist who had just calculated his species' greatest vulnerability. Outside, the battle continued, but he was beginning to realize that his fleet might be facing a more dangerous enemy than he had ever imagined. "Maya," he said, using her name for the first time, Do you understand what you have discovered? A fascinating example of quantum field resonance in biological systems? You have discovered how to destroy my entire species, Vexthel said bluntly. Maya looked at her equations again, then back at him. For the first time since the aliens had appeared, her expression became serious. Oh, that would be bad, wouldn't it? Very bad, Vexthel confirmed. Maya picked up her eraser and moved toward the whiteboard. Then I should probably erase this before anyone else sees it. Wait, Vexthel said quickly. It's too late for that. You've already calculated the frequencies. You know what they are. Maya paused with the eraser in her hand. Yes, but I don't have to do anything with that information. She looked directly into his crystal eyes. The question is, what are you planning to do with your information about how to destroy humans? The tension in the classroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya stood holding her eraser, while Commander Vexthel and his soldiers faced the reality that this young human stumbled upon their species' ultimate weakness. You ask what we plan to do with information about destroying humans. Vexthel said slowly. That was our intention from the beginning. We came here to conquer your world, strip its resources, and either enslave or eliminate your species. Maya set down her eraser and picked up her marker again. Well, that's honest. I appreciate honesty. She turned back to the whiteboard. In that case, let me show you exactly what I've figured out. Maya, no! Professor Harrison said urgently. Don't give them more information. It's okay, Professor, Maya said calmly. She began writing new equations below her previous work. They need to understand what they're dealing with. Her marker moved swiftly across the board as she wrote out the complete mathematical proof. See, Commander, the quantum resonance frequency that holds your molecular structure together is 47.6 terahertz. But if you introduce a counterfrequency at exactly 52.3 terahertz, the interference pattern creates a cascade failure. The Zeltharian soldiers stepped backward involuntarily. Even without understanding the mathematics, they could sense their commander's growing alarm. The beautiful part, Maya continued, is that quantum field effects ignore distance. If I were to generate this specific frequency anywhere on Earth, it would propagate through quantum space and affect every Zeltharian in your entire fleet instantly. She drew a diagram showing expanding waves. The effect would spread through your quantum communication networks back to your home ships, then to any other fleets you have operating elsewhere. Essentially, one small frequency generator on Earth could reach every member of your species throughout the galaxy. Commander Vexthel. Crystal body was now flickering so rapidly between colors that he looked like a living disco ball. You calculated all of this in the past 20 minutes? Mathematics is really just logic made visible, Maya said, adding finishing touches to her equations. Once you understand the underlying principles, the rest follows naturally. She stepped back to examine her complete work. The whiteboard was now covered with formulas that described exactly how to cause the total extinction of the Zeltharian species using nothing more complex than a radio transmitter, tuned to the correct frequency. How long would it take you to build such a device? Vexthel asked, dreading the answer. Maya glanced around the physics classroom, taking inventory of the equipment. With what we have here, about 15 minutes. Professor Harrison's lab has signal generators that can reach those frequencies. I just need to link 3 of them together and calibrate the output. 15 minutes, Vexthel repeated faintly. Well, maybe 20 if I want to double-check my calculations, Maya admitted. I'd hate to make an error in something this important. Professor Harrison was staring at his student in amazement. Maya, do you realize what you're saying? That I could commit genocide against an entire alien species using equipment from our physics lab? Maya asked. Yes, I realize that, It's actually kind of terrifying when you think about it. She turned to face the Zeltharian commander. Which brings me to an important question. Why should I not do exactly that? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The alien warriors raised their weapons slightly, but Vexthel held up a hand to stop them. He understood that in this moment weapons were useless. The small human female held the lives of every member of his species in her hands. You would commit genocide to save your world? He asked. To save my world from people who came here planning to commit genocide against us? Maya replied. That would be logically consistent, wouldn't it? She walked closer to him, still holding her marco like a weapon of mass destruction. But here's the thing, Commander. Genocide is wrong. It doesn't matter if you can do something. That doesn't mean you should do it. Vexthel found himself in the strangest situation of his long military career. He was having a moral philosophy discussion with a member of a species he had planned to destroy. You're saying you won't use this weapon? He asked. I'm saying I don't want to use it, Maya corrected. There's a difference. I could build the frequency generator. The math is solid, and the technology is simple. But killing an entire species would be terrible, even if that species was trying to kill mine. She gestured toward the whiteboard. This knowledge is dangerous. Really dangerous. And dangerous knowledge comes with responsibility. Jake had been listening to the conversation with growing amazement. Maya, they're trying to conquer Earth. Don't we have the right to defend ourselves? Of course we do, Maya said. But there's a difference between defense and genocide. Defense means stopping them from hurting us. Genocide means wiping out every man, woman, and child of their species across the entire galaxy. She looked directly at Commander Vexthel. I don't think all Zeltharians are evil. I think you have a military culture that values conquest, but that doesn't mean your entire species deserves to die. You would show mercy to those who came to destroy you? Vexthel asked, genuinely puzzled. I would show intelligence, Maya replied. Mercy is part of intelligence. Smart species don't commit genocide unless they absolutely have to, because genocide creates more problems than it solves. She pointed to her equations on the whiteboard. But I want you to understand something very clearly. Humans do have the ability to defend ourselves. We're not helpless primitives. We're a young species with dangerous intelligence and a tendency to solve problems by taking them apart and figuring out how they work. Maya picked up her eraser again and held it up so Vexthel could see it. I could erase these equations right now and pretend I never figured this out. Or I could leave them up there for everyone to see. Or I could build the frequency generator and end this invasion permanently. What do you want? Vexthel asked quietly. Maya smiled, and for the first time since the aliens had arrived, it wasn't the innocent smile of scientific curiosity. It was the confident smile of someone who held all the cards in a very dangerous game. I want to negotiate, she said, because I think there's a solution here that doesn't require anyone to die. She gestured toward the ongoing battle visible through the windows. Your fleet is fighting our ships up there. People on both sides are dying right now. But you and I could stop that with a conversation. You have that much confidence in your species? Vexthel asked. I have that much confidence in mathematics, Maya corrected. The numbers don't lie. And the numbers say that right now, I have the power to save both our species or destroy yours. She held up the eraser again. So, Commander, would you like to discuss terms for peace? Or should I start building frequency generators? Commander Vexthel looked at the small human female who held the fate of his entire species in her hands. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this situation. Maya Chun stood there with a simple eraser, offering to negotiate instead of using the ultimate weapon she had just discovered. You would truly negotiate with an invading force? He asked. I negotiate with my little brother when he tries to steal my pizza, Maya said with a shrug. This isn't really that different. You want something, we want something, so let's figure out a deal that works for everyone. She walked over to a clean section of the whiteboard and began writing again, but this time with words instead of equations. Let's start with what you want. Obviously, you came here for resources, right? Earth has something your empire needs. Vexthale found himself nodding despite himself. Our empire requires rare minerals for quantum technology production. Your planet has large deposits of quantum-resonant crystals. Okay, so you need crystals. Maya wrote crystals on the board. What else? Strategic positioning. This solar system controls several important space routes. Maya added location to her list. Anything else? Vexthal hesitated. Proof of successful conquest. If I return without victory, the High Council will question my competence as a military commander. Ah, Maya said, nodding understandingly. You need to save face with your bosses. That's totally reasonable. She added success for commander to the list. Professor Harrison watched in amazement as his student treated an intergalactic invasion like a business negotiation. Maya, what are you doing? Problem solving, Professor. Every equation has a solution if you approach it correctly. She turned back to Vexthal. Now, what do humans want? Obviously, we want to not be conquered or killed. She wrote stay alive and free on the board. We also want to keep our planet and our civilization intact, she continued, adding those items to the list. And personally, I'd really like to finish my quantum mechanics project and graduate next month. Jake stared at her. Maya, you're worried about graduating during an alien invasion. I've worked really hard on that project, Maya said seriously. It would be disappointing not to finish it. She studied the two lists she had written. So, Commander, you need crystals, strategic location access, and a successful mission report. We need to stay alive and free. That doesn't seem impossible to reconcile. How? Vexthal asked, genuinely curious despite himself. Maya grinned, and her enthusiasm returned. Trade. It's like the most basic human concept ever. You want crystals? We have crystals. We'll sell them to you instead of you taking them by force. The High Council expects conquest, not commerce, Vexthal protested. Then we'll give them conquest, Maya said cheerfully. Earth will officially surrender to the Zeltharian Empire. You'll be the military commander, who successfully conquered a quantum-capable species without losing a single ship or soldier. She began writing a new set of equations. But these were economic rather than physical. Here's how it works. Earth becomes a protectorate of your empire. You get what you want, we get to keep living our lives, and everyone wins. The High Council would accept this. Vexthal asked doubtfully. Why wouldn't they? You'd be the general who conquered an advanced species through superior strategy rather than brute force. That should be even more impressive than a normal military victory. Maya wrote more details on the board. Plus, you get access to human scientific knowledge. We might be younger than your civilization, but we approach problems differently. I figured out your species' quantum vulnerability in 20 minutes. Imagine what human scientists could discover if we were working with you instead of against you. She pointed to her original equations, which were still visible on the other part of the whiteboard. For instance, if quantum resonance can destabilize your biology, it can probably enhance it too. The same frequency that could destroy you might also be modified to strengthen your quantum field cohesion. For the first time since the invasion began, Vexthal's crystal body stopped flickering with agitation. Instead, it began to glow with a steady, interested light. You could improve our biological stability. Potentially. I'd need to study your quantum matrix more thoroughly, but the mathematics suggest several possibilities. Maya's scientific enthusiasm was clearly returning. Actually, this could be really exciting research. No human has ever had the chance to study living crystalline quantum structures before. Professor Harrison stepped forward. Maya, are you suggesting a scientific exchange program with an alien empire? Why not? Maya said. They have advanced technology. We have fresh perspectives on quantum science. Collaboration benefits everyone. She turned back to Commander Vexthal. Think about it. Instead of stripping Earth bare and moving on, you could establish a permanent research partnership. Our scientists could work together for decades, maybe centuries. Your empire would benefit from human innovation, and we'd learn from your advanced technology. And if we refuse this partnership? Vexthal asked carefully. Maya's expression became serious again. She picked up her eraser and held it near the whiteboard where her weapon calculations were written. Then I erase these equations, and we go back to fighting. Your fleet battles our ships. People die on both sides, and eventually one of us wins. She paused dramatically. Or I don't erase them and I start building frequency generators. In which case, everyone in your fleet dies horribly. Your empire loses an entire military force, and Earth gets a reputation as the planet that commits genocide against alien invaders. That would make future diplomatic relations rather difficult, Vexthal admitted. Exactly. Much better for everyone if we skip the mass murder and go straight to the part where we're friends. Maya smiled brightly. Plus, I really do want to study your quantum biology. This could be the discovery of the century for both our species. Through the classroom windows, they could still see the battle raging in the upper atmosphere. But Commander Vexthal was no longer paying attention to the fight. He was considering the most unusual surrender proposal in the history of the Zeltharian Empire. You would trust us to honor such an agreement? He asked. Trust has to start somewhere, Maya said. Besides, I'll still know how to build frequency generators. That's pretty good insurance for good behavior from both sides. She gestured toward her tablet. I could even write up the technical specifications for quantum field enhancement instead of quantum field destruction. A gift to show good faith. Your scientists would probably love to see how human mathematics approaches the problem. Commander Vexthal made a decision that would change the course of history for both civilizations. He lowered his weapon and signaled for his soldiers to do the same. Maya Chan of Terra Nova University, he said formally, on behalf of the Zeltharian Empire, I accept your proposal for peaceful surrender and scientific partnership. Maya clapped her hands together excitedly. Excellent. This is going to be so much fun. Can I get samples of your quantum crystal structure for analysis? And do you have any theoretical physicists in your fleet I could talk to about resonance mathematics? Professor Harrison shook his head in amazement. Maya, I think you just ended an interplanetary war. Really? Maya looked genuinely surprised. Cool. Hey, Professor. Does this count as my final project? Because I'm pretty sure discovering alien quantum biology should be worth some extra credit. Through the windows, the battle in the sky began to cease as Commander Vexthal transmitted new orders to his fleet. The invasion was over, but the real adventure was just beginning. Maya picked up her marker again and began writing. New equations on the board. Not weapons of destruction this time, but formulas for cooperation between two species who had chosen understanding over annihilation. This is going to be the best semester ever, she said happily. Already lost in the mathematics of interspecies scientific collaboration,